Hey everybody, I'm here today to tell you how I passed my driving test on the first try. I've had my license for more than 10 years, so all of the things that I'm going to be telling you were used 10 years ago when I went for my driving test. But the good thing is that they will still work today. They're still applicable today. So with that being said, these are the things that I did to make sure that I was able to pass my driving test on my very first try. Let's get right to it. The first thing that I did was I studied the road signs, and I studied them both from the driver's handbook that I had and also on the road as I was driving around, as I was walking around, as I was bike riding around. So with that being said, the road signs are super practical. And by studying the road signs, I was actually able to identify them really quickly and respond to them really quickly. So with that being said, road signs are everywhere. And if you don't know what to do, if it takes you 5 to 10 seconds, even 3 seconds to think about what to do when you see a road sign, that's 3 seconds that's wasted. And that's not a good thing. You don't want to waste your mental effort when you're driving. You want to focus on the road. Road signs should be immediate identification and immediate response. You need to get to that level, and that's what studying the road signs allowed me to do. That's the first thing that I did. Studied the road signs in the driver's handbook and also on the road, okay, when I was taking the bus, bike riding, driving, walking, and so forth, okay? The second thing that I did was I actually practiced each individual driving skill. So I handpicked all of the driving skills that I might need for the driving test. Turning right, turning left, staying the speed limit, speed control with the gas pedal, braking smoothly, starting smoothly, parking to the right, parking to the left, reverse parking to the right, reverse parking to the left, and so on and so on and so on. So I took all of the driving skills and I literally practiced all of them individually. Just like a sports player would practice a specific sports skill, I practiced a specific driving skill individually. That was the second thing that I did. The third thing that I did was I actually practiced driving in a real life situation as often as I could. For about the month leading up to the test, I literally drove as often as I could in as many situations as I could drive in. So I drove very, very often for at least 20 minutes to half an hour for each driving session, as often as I could facilitate. And I also drove on main roads, side streets, parking lots, uphill, downhill, every possible situation. And that prepared me for anything that I could encounter on the driving test. So that's the third thing that I did. I literally practiced the skill of driving in general in a practical situation as much as I could. Literally, the more that you can drive, the better. The more that you can practice driving, the better off that you'll be. The fourth thing that I did was I learned about the car. Now, knowing about how a car works will help you because you'll know how a car responds. So I actually went and I learned how an engine works. I learned how each of the sensors worked on the car. I learned what each of the controls within the interior of the car does, okay? I learned what each of the lights meant and how to activate every single light, in pairs and so forth, okay? So I learned about everything that I could about the car. That knowledge, believe it or not, will help you on the test because you'll know what's happening. You'll feel comfortable. You won't be wondering why the car is starting to shake a little bit. You'll know it's because of a low idle, and you'll know maybe it's because you turned the air conditioning up too high. And that's what happens when you learn about things. Your mental effort can be dedicated to actually driving. Okay, so the fifth thing that I did that helped me pass the driving test the first time was I was super duper nice to the driving examiner. And this is very underestimated because driving examiners are human beings. And I'm not saying that if you're really nice, but you're a horrible driver, you're gonna pass. That's probably not gonna happen. But if you're really nice and you're a good driver, you stand a better chance at passing. And if you make a little tiny error, they might have a little bit more forgiveness for you or give you a second try at it because they know that you're nervous, okay? So that's the fifth thing that I did. And the sixth thing that I did was I actually played out the driving test in my mind over and over again. Now that reduced my level of anxiety and nervousness for actually taking the driving test, and it also prepared me for anything that I could encounter. So I knew where I was going to be taking the driving test, and I studied the area around the driving test location because I knew I'd be starting from that test location, so most likely I would be heading within the area somewhere, somehow. So I studied that whole area, and I pretty much knew any possible obstacle that I could encounter. Last but not least, the seventh thing that I did was I went over any unexpected, unlikely situations in my mind. Now, these are situations that are very unlikely to happen, but could happen when you're taking your driving test. Let's say an emergency vehicle is approaching from the front of you, from the right of you, from the left of you, from behind you. Those are all situations that you might encounter. They're unlikely, but they might happen. Let's say someone cuts you off. Let's say a car in front of you slams on their brakes. All of these situations are unlikely to happen, but they might happen. So I literally made a mental list of every possible unlikely situation, and I went through what I would do in those situations over and over and over again. And that's basically it. Like I said, I've had my license for almost 15 years. And all of these tips and these pieces of advice were applied more than 10 years ago. But the great thing about these pieces of advice and these tips are that they're evergreen. Driving hasn't changed much. It pretty much hasn't changed at all in the last 15 years. So that being said, these pieces of advice are still super practical and super useful. If you have your driving test coming up, which I'm assuming that you do because you're watching this video, I wish you the best of luck. Put these tips and these pieces of advice into action. Put them into action and you'll be good to go. Practice, 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 and take the test and you'll pass. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.